I never thought a damn riddle would change my life. There I was, Melissa Wood, 34 years old, standing in my corner office at Mitchell & Barnes, staring at another soul-crushing environmental compliance report. My reflection in the window showed a tired brunette in a designer suit, green eyes dulled by years of corporate defense work. "The Henderson chemical file needs your sign-off," my assistant Sarah called through the intercom. I sighed, running fingers through my shoulder-length hair. Another day of defending corporations against environmental violations. The invitation on my desk caught my eye, some charity fundraiser tonight. Normally I'd skip these things, but word was the new EPA director would be there. My firm wanted me to schmooze, keep our corporate clients happy. "You're going to that ridiculous party, aren't you?" Tom Mitchell, senior partner, leaned against my doorframe. "Good girl. We need to maintain relationships." I forced a smile, hating how he always called me girl despite my decade of experience. Wouldn't miss it. The venue was one of those pretentious Atlanta mansions, with more columns than sense. Inside, the city's elite mingled over champagne and pretended to care about saving the planet. I grabbed a glass and found a quiet corner to observe. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host announced, "tonight's entertainment includes our annual Environmental Riddle Challenge. Winner gets a substantial donation to their chosen cause." I almost choked on my drink when I saw her. Tall, blonde, commanding presence in a tailored black dress. She stood near the front, blue eyes sharp with intelligence. Someone whispered she was Layla Hughes, leader of some major environmental organization. The riddle started simple. "I am not alive, but I grow. I don't have lungs, but I need air. I don't have a mouth, but water kills me. What am I?" "Fire!" several voices called out. "Child's play." But the final riddle silenced the room. "In darkness I am born, in light I die. Nature fears my hunger, yet I help her thrive. What am I?" The words formed on my lips just as her voice rang out. We locked eyes across the room as we both said, "Forest fire." The host blinked in surprise. "We have 2 winners!" Layla Hughes smiled at me, a curious glint in those blue eyes. Something shifted in that moment, like the earth tilting on its axis. If I'd known then what was coming, the accusations, the scandal, the nights of investigation, and the way this woman would turn my world upside down, I might have run for the door. Instead, I smiled back. "Quite impressive," she said, approaching with 2 fresh glasses of champagne. "Most lawyers I meet defend corporations. They don't usually understand natural cycles. Maybe I'm not most lawyers." I accepted the drink, our fingers brushing. "No," she replied thoughtfully. "I don't believe you are." Little did I know, within weeks my career would be in shambles, my reputation destroyed, and this woman would be my only ally in a storm of corruption. But that night, we just talked about forest fires and renewal, about how destruction sometimes leads to rebirth. And damn, was that ever going to prove true? 2 weeks after the riddle night, I was knee-deep in the Henderson chemical case when everything went to hell. The numbers weren't adding up. Their environmental impact reports showed minimal toxic discharge, but something felt off about the data. I'd been reviewing the files late into the evening when Sarah knocked on my door. "There's a whistleblower report you need to see." Her face was pale as she handed me the folder. The documents inside made my blood run cold. Internal memos, doctored test results, evidence of massive contamination cover-ups. Henderson hadn't just been fudging numbers. They'd been dumping illegal levels of toxins into Atlanta's water supply for years. "This can't be right," I muttered. But the proof was irrefutable. My hands shook as I reached for my phone to call Tom Mitchell. His secretary said he'd left early. Convenient. The next morning, everything exploded. I arrived at the office to find 2 FBI agents waiting in the lobby. Behind them stood Tom Mitchell, looking grave but somehow satisfied. "Melissa Wood?" One agent stepped forward. "We need to discuss some serious allegations." They had evidence, fabricated evidence, showing I'd been accepting bribes from Henderson Chemical. Bank transfers, emails, even photos of me supposedly meeting with executives at private locations. All fake, but damn convincing. "This is insane," I protested as they laid out their case. "I just discovered their fraud yesterday." "Interesting timing," Tom remarked, his voice dripping with false concern. "Finding evidence of wrongdoing right when you're about to be exposed." The Georgia Bar Association moved fast. By afternoon, my license was suspended pending investigation. Security escorted me out of the building, my personal items in a cardboard box like some cliché corporate drama. I sat in my car in the parking garage, trying not to scream. My phone buzzed with news alerts. Prominent environmental lawyer accused of corruption. My reputation was being shredded in real time. Another message popped up. Unknown number, not everything is as it seems. Meet me at the Botanical Gardens, 7 p.m. Layla Hughes? Why would she reach out now? I almost didn't go. But with my career in shambles and my firm clearly involved in this setup, what did I have to lose? The gardens were quiet at dusk, most visitors gone. Layla stood by the orchid display, her blonde hair catching the last sunlight. She looked different from the fundraiser, more serious, almost grim. "I've been investigating Henderson Chemical for months," she said without preamble. "You're not the first person they've tried to silence. They're framing me because I found evidence of their illegal dumping. Yes, but it goes deeper than that." She glanced around before continuing. "Your own firm is involved. Mitchell & Barnes has been helping corporations cover up environmental violations for years." My world tilted again. "How do you know this?" "Because I have a witness." She met my eyes. "Someone who can prove your innocence and expose the whole operation. But we'll need to work together." I studied her face, looking for any sign of deception. Instead, I found something unexpected, genuine concern, and something else I couldn't quite name. "Why help me?" I asked. "I'm just another corporate lawyer." "No." She smiled slightly. "You're the lawyer who solved my riddle. I trust my instincts, and they say you're exactly who we need right now." As night fell over the gardens, we began plotting my defense. I didn't know then that this partnership would become something far more complex, or that Layla Hughes would end up being both my salvation and my greatest challenge. But standing there among the orchids, I felt hope for the first time since the accusations. Sometimes, I thought, you find allies in the most unexpected places. Layla's office at the Environmental Defense Alliance was nothing like the sterile corporate spaces I was used to. Plants filled every windowsill, and the walls displayed photos of successful conservation projects. It felt alive, purposeful. "Your witness is late," I said, checking my watch for the 10th time. "He's cautious," Layla replied, leaning against her desk. The afternoon sun caught her hair, creating a golden halo effect that was oddly distracting. Working at Henderson Chemical made him paranoid. I paced the room, my heels clicking against the bamboo flooring. "Tell me about him." "Marcus Chen, former environmental compliance officer. He has documentation proving Henderson falsified their reports, and evidence showing how your firm helped cover it up." A knock interrupted us. Marcus was younger than I expected, barely 30, with nervous eyes and a laptop clutched to his chest like a shield. "Show her," Layla said gently. The data was damning. Years of systematic fraud, all orchestrated by Tom Mitchell and Henderson's executives. My discovery of their scheme had forced their hand. They needed a scapegoat. "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" I asked Marcus. "They threatened my family." His voice shook. "But when I saw what they did to you, I couldn't stay quiet." Hours passed as we built our case. The sun set over Atlanta's skyline, casting long shadows across Layla's office. Marcus left, but Layla and I kept working, ordering takeout and spreading files across her floor. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a document. She leaned close, her shoulder brushing mine. The contact sent an unexpected shiver down my spine. "These dates match the suspicious bank transfers they planted in my account," I realized. "We can prove the timeline was manipulated." "Exactly." Her smile was triumphant. "We've got them." Maybe it was the late hour, or the intensity of our shared purpose, but something shifted in the air between us. I became acutely aware of her presence, the subtle scent of her perfume, the way her eyes lit up when she found crucial evidence. "You're nothing like I expected," she said softly. "What did you expect?" "Another soulless corporate lawyer. Instead." She trailed off, studying my face. The moment stretched, charged with unspoken possibilities. We were sitting too close, the case files forgotten between us. Her eyes dropped to my lips, and I felt myself leaning forward slightly. A sharp knock shattered the moment. The security guard's flashlight beams swept across the window. "Evening check," he called through the door. We jumped apart like guilty teenagers. Layla cleared her throat, suddenly very interested in reorganizing papers. "We should call it a night," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. Outside, the Atlanta night was warm and heavy with unspoken words. I sat in my car for a long moment, trying to steady my racing heart. What was I doing? I was fighting for my professional life. I couldn't afford distractions, no matter how compelling. But as I drove home, I couldn't stop thinking about that almost moment in her office. About the way she looked at me, the electricity in that near miss of a kiss. My phone buzzed with a text from Layla. "Same time tomorrow, we have more evidence to review." I typed yes before I could overthink it. Professional boundaries were already blurring, and I knew I should care more about that fact. But somehow, in the midst of this crisis, Layla Hughes had become more than just an ally. She'd become a possibility I couldn't stop thinking about. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay awake, replaying every moment, every shared glance. Tomorrow, I told myself, we'd focus purely on the case. Tomorrow, I'd remember all the reasons why complications were the last thing I needed. But even as I thought it, I knew I was lying to myself. Atlanta's autumn brought unexpected storms, turning our investigation into a rain-soaked adventure. Layla and I spent days tracking down former Henderson employees, each lead bringing us closer to exposing the truth. That particular evening, we were following up on a promising tip. The rain pounded against the windows of a downtown office building, where a former Henderson accountant had agreed to meet us. "She's not coming," Layla sighed, checking her phone. We'd been waiting in the lobby for an hour. Another dead end? Thunder crashed outside as we headed for the elevator. The storm had knocked out half the building's power, leaving sections dark and eerily quiet. We stepped into the elevator, both lost in thought about our stalled progress. Then, everything went black. "Perfect," I muttered, as the elevator jerked to a stop. The emergency lights flickered weakly, casting strange shadows. "Maintenance says it'll be at least an hour," Layla reported after calling the front desk. She slid down to sit on the floor, patting the space beside her. "Might as well get comfortable." I joined her, acutely aware of how small the elevator felt. Some environmental lawyer I turned out to be. I spent years helping corporations dodge regulations. "You're being too hard on yourself." Her hand found mine in the dim light. "People change, look at you now." The touch of her fingers sent warmth spreading through my chest. "Why did you really decide to help me?" She was quiet for a moment. "That night at the fundraiser when you solved the riddle, I saw something in your eyes. Passion, intelligence. Like you were waking up from a long sleep." "Is that all you saw?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. The air grew thick with tension. In the soft emergency lighting, her blue eyes seemed to glow. She turned toward me, and suddenly we were inches apart. "No," she whispered, "that's not all I saw." This time, there was no security guard to interrupt, no case files between us. Just the sound of rain and thunder and the magnetic pull we'd been fighting for weeks. The kiss was soft at first, tentative. Then something broke loose inside me and I pulled her closer. She tasted like coffee and possibility, her hands tangling in my hair as the storm raged outside. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, she rested her forehead against mine. "I've been wanting to do that since the riddle night." "Me too," I admitted. "I just didn't know it then." The elevator chose that moment to shudder back to life, fluorescent lights blazing. We scrambled to our feet, straightening clothes and trying to look professional. In the lobby, the rain had finally stopped. Layla caught my hand before I could head to my car. "Come back to my place? We can review the witness statements." We both knew work would be the last thing on our minds. That night changed everything. We stayed up late, trading stories and kisses, our case files forgotten on her coffee table. She told me about her journey from corporate lawyer to environmental activist, about the moment she decided to fight for something bigger than herself. "Your turn will come," she said, tracing patterns on my palm. "When this is over, you'll find your true path." I looked at her in the soft lamplight, this brilliant, passionate woman who turned my world upside down. Maybe I already have. Later, driving home in the pre-dawn quiet, I thought about how quickly life can change. 2 months ago, I was a corporate defense attorney with a corner office and a hollow heart. Now I was unemployed, fighting corruption, and falling hard for someone who made me question everything I thought I knew about myself. And somehow, Despite everything, I felt more alive than ever. My phone buzzed with a text from Layla. "Missing you already. Breakfast meeting tomorrow?" I smiled, typing back, "It's a date." The storm had cleared, leaving the Atlanta sky full of stars. For the first time since this whole mess began, I felt truly, completely certain about where I was headed. Sometimes the best path forward is the one you never saw coming. The pieces started falling into place like a sinister puzzle. Marcus's documents revealed a pattern of corruption that went far beyond Henderson Chemical. My own law firm, Mitchell & Barnes, had been orchestrating environmental cover-ups for dozens of companies. "Look at these signatures," I pointed to a stack of permits on Layla's desk. Tom Mitchell signed off on every fraudulent environmental impact statement. And here's where it gets interesting. Layla pulled up financial records on her laptop. "Your firm's environmental division suddenly tripled its revenue 3 years ago." I leaned closer, our shoulders touching. The casual contact still sent sparks through me, but we'd gotten better at staying focused. Mostly. "That's when Mitchell became senior partner," I said. "He must have." A crash from the outer office cut me off. We froze, listening to footsteps in the darkness. It was well past midnight. No one else should have been there. Layla moved silently to her desk drawer, pulling out a small taser. At my raised eyebrow, she whispered, "Environmental activists get threats." The footsteps grew closer. I grabbed my phone, ready to call security, when the door burst open. A masked figure in black swept files off Layla's desk, grabbing her laptop. "Hey!" Layla lunged forward with the taser, but the intruder was faster. They shoved past us and ran. We chased them down 3 flights of stairs, but they disappeared into a waiting car. I caught a glimpse of the license plate before it sped away. Back in Layla's office, the damage was extensive. Files scattered everywhere, her backup hard drive missing. But something about the scene felt wrong. "This wasn't random," I said, picking up papers. "They knew exactly what to take." "Damn it." Layla slumped against her desk. "All our evidence against Mitchell. Not all of it." I pulled a USB drive from my pocket. "I made copies last night." Her relief turned to concern. "They'll come after you next. You should stay at my place tonight." In her car, I ran the license plate through a law enforcement database I still had access to. The car's registered to a shell company, but look who owns it. Carlton Industries. Layla's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "They're one of your firm's biggest clients." At her apartment, we spread the remaining files across her living room floor. The pieces were connecting faster now. Mitchell had built a network of corporate clients who paid premium rates for environmental law consulting, really a sophisticated cover-up scheme. "Your suspension wasn't just about silencing you," Layla realized. "They needed to discredit you in case you found out." "Too late." I smiled grimly. "We have enough to." Layla suddenly pulled me away from the window. A red dot had appeared on the wall where I'd been standing. "Get down." She yanked me behind her couch as something whizzed through the window, embedding in her wall. Heart pounding, I reached for my phone. "We need to call the police." "Wait." Layla crawled to the projectile, a metal arrow with a note attached. "Back off or the next one won't miss." We stared at each other in the darkness. She moved closer, her hand finding mine. "You okay?" Instead of answering, I kissed her. It was fierce and desperate, fueled by adrenaline and fear and something deeper that had been growing between us. When we broke apart, she pressed her forehead to mine. "We need to get somewhere safe. I know a place." I thought of my grandmother's old cabin outside the city. But first, I pulled her close again, needing to feel her solid and real against me. The world was spiraling into danger and conspiracy, but this, us, felt like the only certain thing left. Later, driving through back roads to avoid being followed, Layla reached over and squeezed my hand. "We'll figure this out." I nodded, watching Atlanta's lights fade in the rearview mirror. We had evidence to protect, corruption to expose, and apparently people trying to kill us. But somehow, with her beside me, I wasn't afraid anymore. I was ready to fight back. My grandmother's cabin sat on a forgotten piece of land an hour outside Atlanta. As we pulled up the gravel drive, memories flooded back, summers spent reading on the wraparound porch, learning about constellations from the dock by the lake. "It's beautiful," Layla said, taking in the rustic cedar exterior. How long since you've been here? 2 years. I unlocked the door, breathing in the familiar scent of pine. Not since Grand passed. We brought in our hastily packed bags and the case files we'd salvaged. The cabin had no internet, but it had something better: safety and silence. A place to think. As night fell, we sat on the porch swing, sharing a bottle of wine I'd found in Grand's old cabinet. The case files lay scattered around us, but neither of us was really looking at them anymore. I keep thinking about what I've lost, I admitted. My career, my reputation. Are you having regrets? I turned to look at her, moonlight silvering her blonde hair. No, that's what scares me. I should be devastated, but instead. Instead, I feel more like myself than I have in years. I took another sip of wine. What does that say about the life I was living? Layla was quiet for a moment, then said, "Can I tell you something? Something I've never told anyone?" I nodded, watching her profile in the darkness. 5 years ago, I was like you, corporate lawyer, corner office, empty inside. Then my partner died. Her voice caught. Car accident. She was an environmental scientist, always trying to get me to see the bigger picture. She'd never mentioned a previous relationship. I took her hand, squeezing gently. After she died, I couldn't keep pretending. I left my firm, started the Environmental Defense Alliance. She turned to me, eyes bright with unshed tears. I promised myself I'd never fall for another lawyer. The words hung between us, heavy with meaning. How's that working out? Instead of answering, she kissed me. It was different from our previous kisses, slower, deeper, full of unspoken feelings. The case files slid forgotten to the porch floor as she pulled me closer. We made our way inside, leaving a trail of wine glasses and professional boundaries behind us. In the darkness of my grandmother's guest room, we found something that felt like healing, like hope, like coming home. Dawn found us tangled in sheets, Layla tracing lazy patterns on my skin. Outside, birds were welcoming the morning, their songs mixing with the rustle of pine needles in the breeze. "We should get back to work," she murmured, making no move to leave the bed. "We should." I pressed a kiss to her shoulder. "The fate of Atlanta's environment hangs in the balance." She laughed, then grew serious. "Are you ready for what comes next? Once we expose Mitchell and Henderson, there's no going back." I thought about my old life, the hollow victories, the compromised ethics, the loneliness I'd never fully acknowledged until now. Then I looked at Layla, this brilliant, passionate woman who'd helped me find my way back to myself. "I don't want to go back," I said. "I want to go forward, with you." She smiled, that radiant smile that had first caught my attention at the fundraiser. "Even if it means giving up corporate law forever?" Especially then. I sat up, suddenly energized. Maybe we could start our own firm, environmental justice, but done right this time. "Careful," she teased. "You're starting to sound like an activist." "Blame the company I've been keeping." Later, as we finally returned to our investigation, I felt different. Stronger. The path ahead was dangerous and uncertain, but I wasn't the same person who'd walked into that fundraiser months ago. I was better, braver, more myself. And I wasn't alone anymore. My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus with new information about Mitchell's connections. The real work was waiting. But first, I pulled Layla in for one more kiss, savoring the feeling of everything falling into place. Sometimes losing everything is just the universe's way of showing you what you really need. The truth hit like a sledgehammer on a quiet Tuesday morning. Marcus had sent over encrypted files from Henderson's internal servers, and what they revealed made my blood run cold. "Tom Mitchell isn't just helping cover up violations," I told Layla, spreading printouts across her kitchen counter. "He's orchestrating them." She leaned over my shoulder, coffee forgotten in her hand. "What do you mean?" "Look at these emails. He's been advising companies on how to dump waste illegally for years. The legal fees for defending them were just a bonus. He's getting kickbacks from the dumping operations themselves." "That's why he had to shut you down so quickly," Layla realized. "You weren't just finding evidence of Henderson's crimes. I was about to expose his entire operation." I ran my hands through my hair, fighting nausea. "I've been working for a criminal enterprise disguised as a law firm." Layla's phone buzzed, a text from her assistant. Her face went pale as she read it. "We have another problem. The Environmental Defense Alliance's funding has been frozen." "What? How?" Emergency board meeting I wasn't informed about. She grabbed her laptop, typing furiously. They're citing financial irregularities in our accounts. I moved behind her, reading over her shoulder. Who called the meeting? James Warner. Her voice was tight. He joined our board 6 months ago. Very enthusiastic about our mission, great connections. Let me guess. He came highly recommended by someone at Mitchell Amp, Barnes? She closed her eyes. Damn it. I should have seen it. I was about to respond when her laptop pinged with an email. The sender was anonymous, but the message was clear. Back off the Henderson case or the alliance goes down. Final warning. Layla slammed the laptop shut, but not before I caught a glimpse of something in the email's metadata. Wait. Open that again. The email headers revealed what I suspected. It had been sent through a server registered to Carlton Industries, the same company that owned the car used in the office break-in. They're all connected, I said. Mitchell, Henderson, Carlton, it's a network. And Warner's their plant on my board. Layla started pacing, her nervous energy filling the kitchen. He's been feeding them information about our investigation. I caught her arm, pulling her close. Hey, we'll figure this out. She melted into me for a moment, then straightened with renewed determination. We need to get to the office. If Warner's dirty, he might try to destroy evidence. We arrived at the Environmental Defense Alliance headquarters to find chaos. Staff members stood in clusters, whispering about the frozen accounts. Warner was in Layla's office, going through her files. Just doing my duty as a board member, he said smoothly when we confronted him. Given the financial irregularities. Save it, James. Layla's voice could have frozen hell. We know who you really work for. His smile turned cold. Careful, Layla. You've built something impressive here. Would be ashamed to see it destroyed by baseless accusations. They're not baseless. I stepped forward, enjoying his flicker of surprise. We have proof of everything. Mitchell's kickbacks, Carlton's involvement, your role as their spy. You should have stayed disgraced, Ms. Wood. He moved toward the door. Some battles aren't worth fighting. After he left, Layla sank into her chair. They're going to dismantle everything I've built. I knelt beside her. No, they won't, because we're going to take them all down first. She looked at me, blue eyes fierce despite her fear. How? By doing what lawyers do best, following the money. I pulled out my phone, dialing a number I'd hoped never to use again. And I know just where to start. That night, holding Layla in her bed, I listened to her breathing even out in sleep. Tomorrow would bring more battles, more revelations, more danger. But for now, I focused on the warmth of her against me, the certainty that we were fighting for something real. Sometimes the hardest part of discovering a betrayal isn't the pain, it's finding the courage to keep believing in people anyway. Looking at Layla, I knew that courage would be worth it. The war was just beginning, but we were ready. Together. The whistleblowers started coming forward one by one. First, a lab technician from Henderson with photos of falsified test results. Then, an accountant from Carlton Industries with proof of illegal payments. Each piece of evidence strengthened our case against Mitchell and his network. We need more, Layla said, pinning another document to the investigation board in her living room. We'd moved our operation here after the office became compromised. Something that can't be explained away. I was about to respond when my phone buzzed, a text from Sarah, my former assistant. Check the news. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution headline made my heart stop. Environmental lawyer's corruption case takes personal turn. Below was a photo of Layla and me, clearly taken through her apartment window, caught in an intimate moment. They're trying to discredit us, Layla said, reading over my shoulder. Make it look like this is all about us. I finished her sentence, anger building. They're painting this as a romantic conspiracy instead of actual crimes. The article quoted anonymous sources suggesting our relationship predated the accusations, implying we'd manufactured evidence to target Mitchell Amp Barnes. Comments were already flooding in, questioning our credibility. Let them talk, Layla said firmly, taking my hand. We have truth on our side. But the personal attacks were just beginning. That afternoon, Warner called an emergency press conference as acting chair of the Environmental Defense Alliance. It pains me to announce, he said, his fake concern perfectly calibrated for the cameras, that we've discovered serious ethical breaches within our organization. I watched Layla's face as Warner detailed his allegations: misused funds, compromised investigations, all supposedly tied to her relationship with me. She stood straight-backed, unflinching, but I felt her hand trembling in mine. "We need to respond," I said after the broadcast. "Show them they can't intimidate us." Layla was already typing on her laptop. "I'm calling every reporter I know. It's time to tell our side." The next morning, we held our own press conference on the steps of the federal courthouse. Dozens of reporters gathered, hungry for the next twist in the scandal. "Yes, Melissa Wood and I are in a relationship," Layla began, her voice clear and strong. "We won't apologize for finding love while fighting for justice." I stepped forward, adding, "But this isn't about us. It's about corporate criminals poisoning our city and the lawyers helping them do it." Then we presented our evidence. Former Henderson employees testified about Mitchell's involvement in the toxic dumping scheme. Financial records showed the network of payoffs and shell companies. Email trails revealed Warner's role as a corporate spy. The reporters' questions shifted from our personal lives to the mounting evidence of corruption. By evening, #corporate crimes was trending above #lawyer Levesque scandal. "That was brave," I told Layla later, as we watched the coverage from her couch. "Going public about us." She turned to face me. "I'm done hiding anything. They wanted to use our relationship against us? Fine. Let's show them how strong it makes us." Her words hit me hard. Through all the accusations and attacks, she'd never once suggested keeping her distance to protect her reputation. She'd chosen us, chosen truth, chosen fight over flight. "I love you," I said, the words coming naturally. "You know that, right?" Her smile could have lit up all of Atlanta. "I love you too. Even if you did ruin my professional reputation." "Excuse me? Pretty sure you ruined mine first." We were still laughing when my phone rang, Marcus with new information about Carlton Industries' waste disposal sites. Back to work. But something had shifted. They'd tried to use our relationship to destroy us, but they'd only made it stronger. Every attack, every headline, every whispered rumor had failed to shake what we'd built together. As we dove back into the investigation, I caught Layla watching me with that intense look I'd first seen at the fundraiser. "What?" "Just thinking," she said, "that some scandals are worth every headline." I couldn't have agreed more. We had a long fight ahead, but we'd face it like we'd faced everything else, together, unashamed, and ready to raise hell. Let them talk. We had work to do. The Georgia Environmental Protection Board hearing room felt colder than usual that morning. Maybe it was the air conditioning, or maybe it was the ice in Tom Mitchell's stare as we took our seats across the aisle. "Ready?" Layla squeezed my hand under the table. I nodded, watching the board members file in. We'd spent weeks preparing for this moment, gathering evidence, rehearsing testimony. Everything hinged on the next few hours. "This hearing will come to order," the chairwoman announced. "We're here to address allegations of environmental violations against Henderson Chemical and related parties." Mitchell's legal team went first, painting a picture of corporate responsibility and regulatory compliance. They were good, I should know. I'd once been one of them, but we were better. "Ms. Wood," the chairwoman called, "you may present your evidence." I stood, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. "Thank you, Madam Chair. What I'm about to show you isn't just about one company's violations. It's about a systematic conspiracy to poison our water, soil, and air for profit." The evidence unfolded like chapters in a dark story. Marcus testified about Henderson's illegal dumping practices. Former Carlton Industries employees detailed the kickback scheme. Financial records showed Mitchell's connection to it all. Then came their attempt to discredit us. "Ms. Wood," Mitchell's lawyer drawled, "isn't it true that your relationship with Ms. Hughes began before these allegations surfaced?" "Objection," I said calmly. "My personal life isn't relevant to Henderson's crimes." "Overruled," the chairwoman said, "but counsel, tread carefully." I met Mitchell's smug look head-on. "My relationship with Layla Hughes began after I discovered evidence of your client's crimes. But yes, I love her. Just like I love this city and its people, the ones your clients have been poisoning for profit." A murmur ran through the room. Mitchell's lawyer tried another angle. "And isn't it convenient that your partner's organization stands to benefit from Henderson's prosecution? The Environmental Defense Alliance benefits when the law is upheld," Layla interjected from her seat. Just like every citizen of Atlanta benefits from clean water and air. The hearing stretched into afternoon. We presented soil samples, water tests, internal memos. Each piece of evidence tightened the noose around Mitchell's network. Then came the moment we'd been waiting for. The board calls James Warner, the chairwoman announced. Warner took the stand looking confident, but I saw the sweat on his forehead. He'd agreed to testify in exchange for immunity, and he had nothing left to lose. Mr. Warner, I began, please tell the board about your role in monitoring the Environmental Defense Alliance for Mitchell and Barnes. For the next hour, Warner laid it all bare: the corporate espionage, the coordinated attacks on our credibility, the years of environmental crimes Mitchell had orchestrated. Mitchell's face grew darker with each revelation. During a break, he cornered me in the hallway. You could have had everything, he hissed. Corner office, partnership, respect. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt only pity. I have everything I need. The board's deliberation took 3 hours. When they returned, the chairwoman's expression told us everything. Based on the evidence presented, this board finds clear and convincing proof of systematic environmental violations. We are referring this matter to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. The room erupted. Reporters rushed for their phones. Mitchell stormed out, his legal team scrambling behind him. Layla found me in the chaos, pulling me into a fierce hug. You did it. We did it, I corrected, holding her tight. Later, standing on the courthouse steps in the warm Atlanta sunset, we watched the media frenzy unfold. Headlines were already breaking about Mitchell's arrest, Henderson's stock plummeting, Carlton Industries under federal investigation. What now? Layla asked, her hand finding mine. I looked at her, this amazing woman who'd helped me find my true path. Now we keep fighting, together. She smiled that brilliant smile I'd fallen in love with. I like the sound of that. The battle wasn't over, there would be trials, appeals, more corporate criminals to expose. But standing there with Layla, watching justice finally prevail, I knew we could handle anything. Sometimes the hardest fights lead to the sweetest victories. The Georgia Bar Association's hearing room looked exactly as I remembered it from the day they suspended my license. But this time, I wasn't alone. Layla sat in the front row, her presence giving me strength. Ms. Wood, the bar president began, we've reviewed the evidence from the Environmental Protection Board hearing, as well as the federal indictments against Tom Mitchell and his associates. I stood straight, professional in my navy suit, waiting for the verdict I'd fought months to hear. It's clear that you were not only innocent of the allegations against you, but instrumental in exposing significant criminal activity within the legal profession. The formal apology that followed felt surreal. My license was reinstated, with commendation for ethical conduct under pressure. As I signed the reinstatement papers, I caught Layla wiping away tears. Outside, spring had come to Atlanta. Cherry blossoms lined the streets, a reminder that even the darkest winters eventually end. How does it feel? Layla asked as we walked to her car. Being officially undisgraced? I laughed. Like I can finally breathe again. Though I'm not sure I want to go back to corporate law. Good thing I have a better offer. She stopped walking, turning to face me. The Environmental Defense Alliance just received a major grant. Seems exposing corporate corruption is good for fundraising. Is that so? Enough to hire a brilliant environmental lawyer as our chief legal counsel. Her eyes sparkled. Know anyone who might be interested? Instead of answering, I kissed her right there on the sidewalk, not caring who saw. We'd earned the right to be public with our happiness. The next few weeks passed in a blur of new beginnings. The Alliance's board, now purged of corporate spies, unanimously approved my appointment. Our first official act was establishing a whistleblower protection program for environmental cases. Look at this, Layla said one evening, showing me her laptop. Our exposure of Mitchell's network had sparked investigations across the country. Other firms were being scrutinized, other corporate schemes uncovered. We started something bigger than us, I mused, watching the headlines scroll by. Speaking of starting things, she hesitated. What would you think about us opening our own firm? Alongside our work with the Alliance? I turned to her, surprised. You want to practice law again? With you? Yes. She took my hand. Think about it. An environmental justice firm that actually fights for justice. No compromises, no selling out. The idea took root immediately. We spent that night planning, dreaming, building our vision of what legal practice could be. 2 weeks later, we signed the lease on a small office in downtown Atlanta. The space needed work, but it had huge windows and good bones. Like us, it was ready for transformation. Wood and Hughes Environmental Justice, Layla read as the sign went up. Has a nice ring to it. Hughes and Wood sounds better, I countered, wrapping my arms around her waist. We'll flip for it. Inside, we'd already started making the space our own. Plants lined the windowsills, just like in Layla's old office. Photos of successful environmental projects hung alongside our legal credentials. Our first client came through Marcus, a community group fighting industrial pollution in their neighborhood. The kind of case I would have once helped corporations defend against. Full circle, Layla commented as we reviewed their documentation. Not quite, I said. This time I'm on the right side. That evening, watching sunset paint the Atlanta skyline gold from our new office, I thought about everything that had brought us here. The riddle that started it all, the false accusations that could have destroyed me, the love that helped me find my true purpose. Layla joined me at the window, wrapping her arms around me from behind. Having any regrets? I turned in her embrace, seeing my whole future in her blue eyes. Only that it took me so long to find my way here. Better late than never, she smiled, pulling me closer. Outside, Atlanta hummed with life and possibility. We had cases to win, wrongs to right, a better world to build. But right then, holding the woman I loved in the office we'd created together, I knew one thing for certain. Sometimes losing everything is just the universe's way of showing you what you were meant to find. 1 year to the day after solving that fateful riddle, I stood before the Atlanta Wildlife Preserve's Board of Directors, presenting our case against a developer trying to bulldoze protected wetlands. The environmental impact assessment clearly shows, I argued, pointing to our evidence, that this development would destroy critical habitat for endangered species. Beside me, Layla added the emotional punch to our legal framework, describing the preserve's importance to Atlanta's ecosystem. We'd become quite the team over the past year, her passion perfectly balancing my precision. The board voted unanimously to protect the preserve. Another victory for Woodamp, Hughes Environmental Justice, our third this month. Not bad for our first year, Layla said, as we walked the preserve's trails afterward, celebrating our win. The spring air was thick with the scent of magnolias, and birds called overhead. Remember when we used to be on opposite sides of these fights? I asked, thinking of my corporate law days. You mean when you were young and foolish? That was only a year ago. She laughed, pulling me off the main trail onto a hidden path. I have something to show you. The path led to a small clearing overlooking a pond. To my surprise, a picnic blanket was already spread out, complete with champagne and our favorite takeout. You planned this, I accused, delighted. Guilty as charged. She poured 2 glasses. Happy anniversary. Anniversary? 1 year since you solved my riddle. She raised her glass. The best wrong answer I've ever received. I nearly choked on my champagne. Wrong answer? What do you mean? Her eyes danced with mischief. The original riddle's answer wasn't forest fire, it was love. Born in darkness, dies in light, nature fears its hunger, yet helps her thrive. You're kidding. I stared at her. All this time. I couldn't very well tell you then. You were too busy being brilliant and beautiful and completely oblivious to what was happening. So you just... Let me think I was right. Best decision I ever made? She set down her glass, taking my hands. And speaking of decisions, my heart stopped as she pulled a small box from her pocket. Melissa Wood, she said softly, you walked into my fundraiser a year ago and gave the wrong answer to my riddle. Then you proceeded to turn my whole world upside down in the best possible way. She opened the box, revealing a simple but stunning ring. Want to keep solving riddles with me forever? I looked at this amazing woman, my partner in law, in love, in fighting for what's right, and felt my eyes fill with tears. On one condition, I managed. What's that? We never tell anyone I got that riddle wrong. Her laughter echoed across the pond. Deal. Later, as sunset painted the preserve in gold and pink, we walked back along the trail, my new ring catching the light. A pair of endangered wood storks flew overhead, the very species we'd helped protect today. "You know," I said, "I think I finally understand the real riddle." "Oh?" "It's not about the answer. It's about finding someone worth solving mysteries with." She squeezed my hand. "Now who's being poetic?" Back at our office, a new case waited on my desk. Another battle for environmental justice. But now it wasn't just work. It was our shared mission, our love story, our future. "Ready to save the world?" Layla asked from the doorway. I looked at her, my partner, my love, my answer to every important question, and smiled. "With you? Always." Sometimes the wrong answer leads you exactly where you're meant to be, and sometimes a riddle is just the universe's way of helping you find your way home. The end.